Let me give you another example. I want to talk about if mathematicians had a Hall of Fame, he would be the greatest logician of all times. In my book, he is. Well, I suppose you could argue that Aristotle comes close. So maybe two of them will share the honor. But he's really one of the greatest logicians, and not just logicians, but mathematicians of all time. And in fact, he worked with Albert Einstein at the Institute for Advanced Study. And Einstein actually told his friends that the only reason Einstein, came to work was so that he would have a chance to walk home with Gödel and talk to him in the evening. A great mind of the 20th century, famous for his incompleteness theorem. It's going a little bit. Great, thank you. Actually, in fact, there are two incompleteness theorems. So I'm talking about the first one, which says basically that in any formal system. Now, what is a formal system? A formal system is something where you have a system of axioms, things which you accept as given from the outset, and rules of inference. Like if you have A as an assertion, like an axiom, and then A implies B, then B is also an assertion, is also a sentence, which you prove. So you start with axioms, you use rules of inference, and you produce step by step other statements or assertions, which you call theorems. So formal system works as an algorithm, and in fact there is essentially no difference between formal systems and algorithms. Now, what he said, what his incompleteness theorem, published in 1931, says, is that if you have such a formal system, which one is sufficiently sophisticated, it's a technical thing. It means that you can speak about whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all operations on them, and all the things we usually do with numbers. The technical term is piano arithmetic. That's number one. Number two, consistent. Consistent means that you cannot prove that it's not contradictory, your formal system. So you cannot prove simultaneously A and the negation of A. Because if you can prove A and negation of A, then you can prove every statement. So it's not so interesting. So suppose you have a sufficiently sophisticated and consistent formal system. Then his theorem, and this is a mathematical theorem, it's not some kind of a, guess or speculation. It is a mathematical theorem which is accepted by everyone on the planet Earth. It says that there will always be a statement which is true but cannot be proved within this system. In other words, truth cannot be formalized mathematically. Truth cannot be expressed by an algorithm, not because we are not sophisticated enough, not because we're stupid, we don't know how to do it. In principle, this is an inherent property of our logical thinking. Truth cannot be formalized. Maybe I'll tell you a couple of words about how to prove it, because it's a beautiful argument, absolutely beautiful argument. It goes to the old adage about the beauty of mathematics. David Henry Thoreau wrote that, we've heard so much about the beauty of mathematics, but very little of it has been sung, So let me sing a little bit about the beauty of mathematics, and I think this is one of the most beautiful theorems and proofs. The idea is a self-referential loop. It's exactly like the self-referential loop that you saw, where I can see me on the screen, and then that's it, and it goes on and on and on like this, you see. Liar's paradox. Consider the sentence. This sentence is a lie, where this means it refers to itself, you see. If you haven't seen this before, you might need a few seconds to figure it out, but it cannot be neither true nor false, because if it's true, then you accept that it's true, then it says, I am a lie, but then it is false. Or if it's false, then it has to be true, so it cannot be either. It's a very interesting thing when you find it. And this, of course, has been known since ancient Greeks, I suppose. And he used the same idea, Gödel. He showed that if you have in your formal system whole numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, you cannot make the liar's paradox sentence in your formal system. But you can make sort of the next best thing. A sentence which refers to itself in this way. This sentence cannot be proved. And you see, so if you could prove it, then you would also prove that you cannot prove it. And that would mean that your formal system is inconsistent, because you would prove it and its negation. So if your system is consistent, formal system is consistent, or another word is sound, so it's not self-contradictory, then you cannot prove this. But then it's true. And it cannot be true. So here is a true statement, but it cannot be proved. Now, what to do? Well, in mathematics we say, well, it's not such a big deal because so you get this statement, you can add it as an axiom. You can take this sentence and add it as a new axiom. So then you have a true statement which is proved because axioms by definition are theorems. But then you obtain a new formal system. And in this new formal system, there will be another statement which you cannot reach by formal argument. It's like a horizon line. You can chase it and you can run after it. You can't reach the horizon line. Same thing here. So very beautiful argument. And so in fact, this is a very strong indication also of the fallacy of these ideas that we can replicate our consciousness by an algorithm, which is the same as a formal system. Roger Penrose, a great mathematician, has published a book in 1994, Shadows of the Mind. It's like a big book, like 500 pages. And he used Gödel's completeness theorem to give a detailed argument that there is something in our conscious thought process that eludes computation. We have access to mathematical truths that are beyond any robot's capabilities. Even mathematical thinking cannot be replicated by an algorithm. And in fact, if you talk to mathematicians, like myself, they will tell you that when we actually make a mathematical discovery, at that moment when we make a mathematical discovery, our thinking stops. Our thinking stops just for a second to let in an insight, to let our intuition, our instinct, our inspiration do its magic. That's what it means to be human. But if you've never experienced that, if you don't know that experience, you can take the cue from Penrose. In fact, another scientist, John Lucas, proposed a similar argument. So sometimes it's called Lucas-Penrose argument. Now, it's not a mathematical theorem. It's not a mathematical theorem. And it has been debated. Some people, because Penrose is very careful. He anticipated all possible arguments and he argues. It's very beautiful. It's really an amazing intellectual feat, what he had done in this book, in my opinion. But of course, you could always find people who will go and say, start nitpicking and like, well, he left the door open here, left the door open there. That maybe it's actually possible to replicate mathematical thought by an algorithm. So you see, this is where we come to maybe the main point. There isn't an algorithm, there isn't a theorem which will answer this question for us. There isn't an experiment which will tell me who I am. You can build a machine, $10 billion machine like LHC, It's not going to answer this question for me. I have to answer this question. I can take some clues from mathematics, from what mathematics tells me here or here, that it's not possible. Which, by the way, Ray Kurzweil never talks about Gödel's incompleteness. I actually tried to Google Ray Kurzweil, Gödel's incompleteness theorem. The only results I got were, pages where people were asking him the question, why you never address Gödel's incompleteness? Why are you so enthusiastically talking about transferring your mind, or everyone else's mind actually, to a machine, but you have not even given any consideration to one of the landmark achievements of mathematics of the 20th century. But it is actually something very systematic. We decided that we are just bags of elementary particles assembled in a certain way. Nothing more. Even great physicists who know about quantum mechanics, who understand that this cannot be true. They have fallen into this trap. I was just, I wanted to give you a quote, because just so you don't think I'm attacking a straw man, I want to give you a real quote from Carlo Rovelli, a great physicist. He's actually one of the good ones. These are my people, I represent. But, here is what he said. This is on edge.org in response to their annual question, just 6 months ago. The world is more or less just a large collection of particles arranged in various manners. This is just factually true, he says. Suitably arranged, it can reason like Einstein or think like Joplin. I'm not sure either of them would appreciate that. Not because of some black magic intervening. This is a physicist saying that. How about quantum mechanics? How about quantum mechanics, which tells us that there is no such thing as particles? And by the way, if you really think that this is made of particles, how about finding out that in each atom there is a nucleus, and this nucleus occupies 10, more or less, by a different estimate, but 10 to the minus 15 of the volume of the whole atom. In other words, the atom is 99.99999. Remember that old show of Ali G where you say 9999? It's 899% empty. So if you are serious about this, if you think that you are a collection of particles, or this even is a collection of particles, then you have to admit that most of it is a void. Because of course it's not. Because double slit experiment, when you shoot particles through these two slits, and you expect just two lumps on the screen, because that's what would happen if you shot actual pellets through these two. Just behind those two slits, you would have lumps. But you get interference pattern, because they are also waves. A particle, an electron, is not a particle. It also has another side. But it's not a wave either. Nor is it a particle and a wave. It's something else. It depends on our choice of observation. I wish I had more time to tell you that this kind of experiments also show you the fallacy of our usual understanding of time. It's like, I think it's Yogi Berra said, the future is not what it used to be. But actually, neither is the present or the past. They don't exist, other than in our imagination. And you can prove it by experiments in physics. We don't talk about it so much, because it's very disconcerting. We prefer, for some reason, to say that I'm a bag of particles arranged in a certain way, and moving around. Everybody is a bag of particles, and we're kind of like trying to find our way around, Of course, that's not true. The reality is much more sophisticated than this. And so this made me wonder, why is it? What makes us want to believe this ideas? And I think we have to go all the way back to the 17th century, to Monsieur Descartes, René Descartes, the father of Cartesianism, and one could say of modern science. This idea of a split, of a duality between the body and the spirit, the body and the mind, this idea, je pense donc je suis, I think therefore I am. Someone said, in fact, it's the other way around. When I stop thinking, that's when I am. But we think about it. And if we think about it, then of course we think that that's how it is. The idea of this mechanistic idea of the world, of this sort of like billiard balls flying around and us being these collections of billiard boards or balls or particles like this. It all goes back to 17th century. Cartesianism. And it was very important for us, for the humanity, because of course, these ideas came in protest against the authority, the authoritarian system of the church, of the state. It was a way to give agency to individuals who were oppressed during the Dark Ages. Because science is a great equalizer. 2 + 2 is 4. It doesn't matter how rich you are. Poor, rich, whatever religion, etc. It's the same. It's the same for all of us. It gives us dignity, agency. It was very important for humanity to find these ideas as a refuge from the trauma of the Dark Ages. But here we are 400 years later. The ideas which Descartes came up with to rebel against dogma, are now turning into dogma. And the irony of this is the following. In 17th century, most people believed in God. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm not saying we should or should not believe in God. But there is one aspect of it. If you do believe in God, you accept that there is something ineffable, something that cannot be explained, something beyond all logic and reason. Are we really willing to sacrifice that? So today, perhaps we've lost that, and we decided to believe in science, which is great. Let's believe in science. But let's not, number one, make it into a new religion, and number two, let's not be so selective. Let's not believe in science as it was in the 17th century. Let's accept all of science, everything that science tells us. Let's accept all the achievements of science in the last 100 years. Quantum mechanics, relativity, Gödel's incompleteness. Let's take all of that into account. Why don't we do that? And a friend of mine, I discussed this with a friend of mine. He told me about the psychological condition, which is called Anosognosia. I've been reading about that. It's a very interesting psychological disorder when our logical somebody may have a severe disability, for example, paralyzed limb like an arm or a leg, but their mind, their logical mind, is convincing them that that's not the case. So you'd have a person who would have a paralyzed leg, but he would say, tonight I'm going to go to dance club, tonight I'm going to, and then when you ask that person, so did you go? Oh, I couldn't go because I was busy. So in other words, you find excuses and arguments and you explain to yourself why you couldn't do it instead of facing the reality. Instead of facing the reality of your condition. Anosognosia. Is that becoming our common disease? What exactly are we trying to run away from? What exactly is it that we are afraid to face? And another point is they talk about the body as if it is this fixed object like, like this podium. But we know from biology that the body is constantly rejuvenated. All the cells are constantly rejuvenated. It's this constant motion, constant motion of us and the universe. And we are all connected by this. It's not, you don't have to listen to a guru, you don't have to go to listen to spiritual teachers, who, by the way, have been saying that all along. Modern science tells us. So we believe in science? Great. Let's take that from our science. So when they say that they want to create an avatar, the said robot which I showed you earlier, that's a fixed thing. That is a fixed thing. So what do you want? You want to capture that. You want to capture that. But you can't capture a whirlpool. You can't capture a vortex in an ocean. It's there. It's moving. It's alive. But you can't just grab it, That's what happens, And of course, that would be fine, back to Mr. Kurzweil. And I don't want to appear like I'm picking on him, but here's what I read in The Guardian. He takes 150 pills a day because he would like to survive until 2045, which is, by his predictions, is a time when he will be able to transfer himself onto a robot and become immortal. But he has to survive until then, Wouldn't it be disappointing if he died just 1 year before, 2044? Damn! I took 150 pills a day for so many years, and it didn't work. According to some reports, he's increased to 250. And by the way, he sells those pills online. It's called Ray and Terry. Kind of like Ben and Jerry, except with no fun. Now, of course, it's his personal matter, Anybody's free to take as many pills as they want. But, and he's also, it would be fine if he tried to build this robot in his garage. But in fact, he's trying to build this robot using the resources of the biggest company, information technology company in the world, called Google. In December of 2012, Mr. Kurzweil was appointed as the director of engineering at Google. The position he is still occupying today. And according to a report at MIT, in the MIT Technology Review, his scope has actually expanded. He is in charge of all the research in artificial intelligence at Google. Okay? The Guardian quotes Larry Page, one of the founders of Google, saying, "We'll give you independence, but you will also have all the Google scale resources." And those resources are quite amazing. I don't know if you've read about this, but Google has been buying left and right. It was been on a shopping spree, buying robotic companies, artificial intelligence companies. They paid almost $1 billion for two startups, the DeepMind and Magic Leap. They bought DeepMind outright for close to $500 million. They invested more than $500 million in the Magic Leap recently. $1 billion for two startups. When they bought DeepMind, they announced, a year and a half ago, they announced that they will have an ethic board on the issues of artificial intelligence. Well, I Googled Google Ethics Board last night. Guess what I found? There's no information about it. Oh, wait, there was information. A couple of weeks ago, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal in which they said that Google spokesman declined comment on the ethics board. The founders of Google have famously said, "Don't do evil," will be our motto, and I have no reason to doubt that. But Google is a company. And a company is not a person, no matter what our Supreme Court would say on that topic. A company is an algorithm. A company is an algorithm which has a utility function which is called profit. So how do you expect to contain this research? How could you expect to remember who we are if you have as the head of your research in artificial intelligence someone like this? But I don't want to pick on Mr. Kurzweil. It's almost like, because I want to be honest with you. He's me, I am a mathematician. It's hard to talk about this. It's hard to admit it, but I was like this once, I know, and now I know why.